Hello, and welcome to the News in 5 for August 2022. I'm your host, Peter Martin, president of Gosselin Martin Associates. As you know, the News in 5 is a quick look back at the month that was in healthcare facilities management. We look at 3 stories. We look at the market, we look at the organization, we look at a career best practice. Sometimes we go over 5 minutes. Oftentimes we go over 5 minutes, but I thank you for watching. We skipped July. We're back here in August as we're wrapping up the summer. Hope you had a great summer. Hope it was relaxing. And as we approach the Labor Day holiday weekend, hope you have a nice long weekend. Let's look at story number 1, the market. You can go to our website. You can see the jobs that we are currently recruiting for, goslinassociates.com/jobs. But I would just say in general, it is a slower time of the year coming out of the summertime. As you probably know, a lot of organizations ramp it down a bit. It's tough to get people in for interviews. People are on vacation. So I've seen a little bit of a summer slowdown. That should probably pick up as we go into the fall. And then with the natural rhythm of things, organizations probably want to get their searches going prior to the Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year holiday, because you get another slowdown then. So there is market opportunity, a little bit slow though coming out of the summertime. That should pick up in the fall. That is the typical nature of recruiting and looking for jobs. I wanted to put a plug in for our high reliability podcast. It's what your peers are saying. It focuses on healthcare facility management. Our last high reliability podcast, we did one in August. I had Mike Canales on. Mike is the program director at Owensboro Community College. It was called Hammer to Head Honcho. It was a very interesting conversation that I had with Mike. One of the things that I mentioned in that podcast, Mike and I talked about education. Mike's program is educating healthcare facilities folks, getting them their associate's degree in healthcare facilities management, hopefully moving on to bachelor's. But we talked about blind resumes, and I talked about the concept of a blind resume, and it was something that I would like to test out, but I won't because it's probably not ethical, or it is not ethical. But whereby, if you're a fan of college basketball, you have probably seen that as you get closer to the NCAA tournament, if you turn on ESPN, Fox Sports, whatever you put on, they put blind resumes for teams. And they put their record up, they put their RPI strength of schedule up, they put their conference record up, and they ask you to pick. You don't know the name of the team, but they say, who are you going to pick? Who's going to make the tournament? And so it's a blind resume test. I've often said I want to do that in healthcare facilities management. If you've listened before, you know that I don't think a college degree should be necessary in healthcare facilities management. But that conversation got me thinking, and here's another gentleman who does not have a degree at all. His name is Steve Jobs. I'm sure that many of you probably use one of Steve Jobs' many products that he's helped develop. And, Jobs is a really interesting guy. And here's where we just go off on a little bit of a tangent from healthcare facilities management. I was never really into Jobs much. I didn't know a lot about him, but probably 10 years ago, or whenever Walter Isaacson came out with this bio, which was really well done, you'll see it was for sale on the book rack, and I picked it up. It was 50% off. And I said, let me read that. It's kind of cheap. Let me buy it. And it was a great read. There's a lot of leadership lessons in there. It talks about the beginnings of Apple's, the struggles that Jobs had. So I would recommend really anybody read it. But what was interesting to me is Jobs, without the college degree, he left early. But his daughter put out a biography about 3 years ago. His daughter is named Lisa Brennan Jobs. She wrote a book called Small Fry. I just thought this was particularly interesting. Jobs believed that a college education turned people into bozos. Probably not the word I would use, but he used it. I guess throughout his life, he liked bozo. This particular word, which is informal for stupid or insignificant, was one of Jobs' favorite words. The reason Jobs was against it, and this is a quote, "They teach you how other people think during your most productive years. It kills creativity. It makes people into bozos," he said. It's kind of harsh, but if you know Jobs, you also know that those soft skills, we talk a lot about soft skills, the soft skill nature of Jobs developed as he went along in his career. But I thought that was interesting, his thoughts on education. And that leads me into story number 2, the organization. I had a conversation with an organization earlier this week, it was about a recruiting job that they were asking me about. And I asked them, is a college degree necessary? And they said that it was. And so we went back and forth on that. I try to be very respectful of an organization's position on that. I know I can't really probably change minds, but I do try to push back a little bit on it respectfully. And they said they needed they wanted a bachelor's degree, that it was an organizational mandate at the director level. And so I said to them, I can see that. I said, my position in facilities management at the director level, you're getting rid of a lot of folks potentially who have 20 to 25 years of experience and they can't apply for your position. I said, I can see that position. I can see the degree requirement in certain areas, certainly in finance, clinical accounting, other areas. I mean, you do need the degree. And so I'm not anti-education, as I've said 1,000 times. And I said, would you reconsider that? And he said, well, we know that you don't always need the degree in facilities management, but that's the organization and that's what we required. And that is just, if you've heard me before, that's some of the thinking that I just can't wrap my hands around. And I guess, I wanted to bring up jobs again. If you've read the book, I read the book years ago. If you've bought Apple products before, and I think I'm trying to tie this in, and we're not all Steve Jobs. I've talked about Abraham Lincoln before. We're not all Abraham Lincoln. We're not all brilliant. These are brilliant people who didn't have college degrees, but people without college degrees can do the job. But when I was reading the Jobs book, he was talking about how involved he was in Apple products. And they were talking about, this is a box for an Apple laptop. And it's really nice. It's a nice box. When I bought my first Apple, I had never, hadn't read the book yet. But one of the things that struck me was this box, because it was so well done. You look at it, I'm not a marketing person. I'm not an arts person. But even for a Neanderthal like me, when it comes to that stuff, I was struck by it. And then I read the book, and they were talking about Jobs and how he was involved in the beginning of the Apple stores and involved in every aspect of the computer, even down to the marketing, the box, and how he painstakingly was involved in getting that box to that look, because he wanted to convey cleanness, conciseness. He wanted everything to be first class. And so as I was reading the book, I was like, that's really interesting. And it clicked with me. I was like, I recognized that when I was opening it up. So Jobs also, from a leadership perspective, and if you read the book, there's a lot in there you can learn. He really did evolve. One of the interesting things that I deal with organizations, and I'm probably the same way, when we look at resumes, we sometimes look at the mistakes or maybe some of those jobs that were only 18 months or 12 months, and increasingly they're happening. I mean, people aren't staying as long as they used to. But with Jobs, on this resume, and this resume was created by a company called, this isn't the Jobs' formal resume, it was created by a company called Enhance You. But one of the sections they have is struggles that I learned from dropping out of college, launching failed products, failing to identify a customer. These were all things that Jobs struggled with and were quote unquote failures. I think we as organizations, sometimes we focus on those failures, and sometimes we focus on failures to the point of not considering people who really are qualified. So my point there is, let's not always focus on failures. When I talk to our clients, it's like, talk to this person, find out why they only stayed 2 years, find out why, what happened. We have all failed. Jobs failed, Abraham Lincoln failed, I failed. If we're looking for that perfect candidate who has not failed, then you're probably going to be looking for a while, especially in this market. I think Jobs is one of the things they talk about in the book too, is Steve Jobs, and he had something called the reality distortion field. And this was him as a leader. He didn't have great soft skills. He didn't really have great emotional intelligence, though he worked on it. And he didn't call it emotional intelligence, but he worked on his leadership faults, his volcanic temper, his short-temperedness, his lack of communication. He worked on these faults throughout his career. Emotional intelligence, and you can see the five categories of emotional intelligence. That's a great, that is a core attribute needed in healthcare facilities management. And again, self-awareness, motivation, self-management, social skills. It's not the sole case of college degrees. But getting back to the reality distortion field, they said that Jobs had as a core of him, he was able to get his employees, to get his team members to go above and beyond. They talk about in the book how they had 10 months to release a product, and all of his folks thought, well, that's crazy. They were bringing a new person on board to the team, and they said, we got to get this product launched in 10 months. And the person said, we're never going to do that. That's crazy. And the Apple employee who had been there for a while coined that reality distortion field. It was coined in 1980, whereby it allowed him to con people into believing his vision because he has personally embraced it and internalized it. You did the impossible because you didn't realize it was impossible. Steve had a way of motivating based on the big picture. Jobs had passion. One of the things that we look for in healthcare facilities management personnel is passion, because healthcare is a passion and patient care is a passion. You can have a college degree, but if you don't have the passion for people, you're not going to be successful. So there's lots of really good management principles that you can cull out of this book. It's not a management book per se, but you can learn a lot as you read about Jobs. He's a fascinating guy. And I was driving my son out to college in the Midwest last week, and we were talking, and we were together for 18 hours. And he was listening to, at one point I said to him, what are you listening to? And he's like, oh, I'm listening to a Steve Jobs presentation at the Apple. Remember Apple, and they still do once a year, they do the big product unveil. And he was listening to Jobs, and it was when they were introducing the iPod. And my son's like, I love listening to him, especially as you listen back to, the early 2000s, what he was envisioning and what has become. And so Jobs still resonates today. And I've often thought, what would he think of what has happened to the Apple company and where we have come? We'll never know. He died about 10 years ago now, but certainly a fascinating person, one that we can learn a lot from even today. I think the biggest thing, one of the biggest things I take out of it, and it's why I love history, is Jobs struggled. He was kicked out of Apple, came back to Apple, or Macintosh. It's fascinating, but it's a story of leadership. It's a story of failure. It's a story of perseverance. It's a story of passion. It's a story of what we're looking for in employees, or at least what we should be looking for in employees. Not a perfect resume per se, but flawed people who are passionate for healthcare facilities management. They exist. You need to find them. The last story is a best practice, a career best practice. We are rolling out a free summer series, fall. Boy, I'm in the wrong time of year. A fall educational seminar. Hopefully you've seen it. It's on our website. They're free classes, and I say it's a career best practice because the 3 classes that we will do is, I need my glasses. Can't always see anymore. In September 22nd, we'll do the Facility Director's Toolbox, updated for 2022. What skills do facility directors need today? What's the market look like? On October 20th, we will once again roll out Dissecting Lincoln's Resume. We created this resume for Abraham Lincoln, much like the Steve Jobs one. We created this for him earlier this year. We'll look at his resume, but we'll look at his resume in the context of you creating your resume and what's the best type of resume to create. We created this one for 2 reasons. Number one, when we were doing our education podcast, Lincoln did not have a college degree. And then we created it because we thought, we can use this to talk about how to really write a good resume that gets the point across in 2022. I talked to so many people, and I know that resumes are a struggle for many. So we have that class in October. And then in November, the final class in our fall series, Communication and Leadership at Gettysburg with a Facility Management Twist. So we'll look at the Battle of Gettysburg. We'll look at the communication and leadership in that battle, and we'll apply it to healthcare facilities management. It's something, history that I'm very passionate about, and we can always learn from it. And we can always bring concepts such as communication and leadership. They are timeless. They were in 1700s. They were in the time of Christ. They are in the time of us. So we'll look at that through that lens. So that's coming up in the fall. You can find more information on our website, more information on our LinkedIn, but we think that that's a career best practice. It's free that you can tune into. They're hour-long classes. So we're excited to be doing that this month. They are sponsored by, of course, those classes by the Gosselin Martin Associates Career Hub. So that is the news in 5 for August 2022. As always, I thank you for watching. I'm your host, Peter Martin. I hope you have a great holiday weekend, and we'll be back hopefully in September, and I hope you join us during our education sessions. Have a wonderful day. Thank you all.